My all-time favourite movie is a movie probably no one in this room has ever seen. It's a movie made in 1946. It won several Academy Awards. And it's called The Razor's Edge. Never seen it? Heard of it? No, probably not. Not surprised. One of the greatest movies of all time. Stars Tyrone Power. And in this movie, it's the story of a man who comes back from World War I, and one of the diggers in the trenches has given him a coin to look after. He's popped that coin in his top pocket. During a heated battle, this man who gave him the coin moved in battle in front of him and took a bullet that would have killed the lead actor in this movie. His name's Larry. And the bullet went through this guy and hit Larry in the pocket where the coin was. He saw his friend die in front of him, who moved to save his life, and his own life was preserved. And he came back from the war thinking, why am I alive? Wondering, why am I alive? And he went on a spiritual quest, and in this quest, he ends up in the mountains of India, somewhere near Nepal, and he has a spiritual teacher tell him that there are 4 ways to earn salvation with God. One is through good deeds, one is through higher knowledge, one is through enlightenment, and one is through sacrifice. And grace is opposed to earning. But you know what grace isn't opposed to? It's not opposed to effort. In fact, grace empowers effort. Grace enables us to do things that we couldn't do. It's by God's grace that we can do things. That famous passage in Ephesians 2:8-9 says, "For by grace you are saved through faith. This is not of yourselves, lest any man boast." Some people need to read the next verse. That's verses 8 and 9. The next verse, verse 10, "For we are created in Christ Jesus as his workmanship for good works." We're created to do something. We're created to be active. We're created to be a people that understand that grace will empower us. Well, for some people, they treat grace as if it's the erase button on their VCR. They treat grace as if they can get away with anything because they can just come to God, appeal to his grace, and they'll be forgiven. Like the man who came to a pastor and said, "Pastor, my marriage hasn't worked out." And the pastor said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, I've fallen in love with another woman. Have you done anything about this?" "Well, yes, I have. I've actually been having an affair with this other woman for the last 6 months." He said to the guy, "Well, no wonder your marriage isn't working out." And he said, "Yeah, well, my last marriage didn't work out either." "Why didn't that work out?" "Well, because I fell in love with another woman and I had an affair with her. And the marriage before that didn't work out either because I fell in love with another woman and had an affair, and that one didn't work out." And the pastor said, "And what are you telling me this for?" He said, "Because I want you to pray that I'll be forgiven and I can just press on in my Christian walk." And the pastor said, "I can't." He said, "Why not?" "Why not? I'm forgiven by God's grace." He said, "No, you're not." He said, you're talking as if you're a Christian. You're talking as if you assume you're a Christian." He said, "Well, I am a Christian. I made a decision to follow Jesus. I am a Christian. And now I want God's grace." And the pastor said to him, "If you were a Christian, if your life had been saved by grace and transformed by grace, you would not be living the way you're living now. You, sir, are not a Christian." Pooh. When I heard that, I said, "Yeah." I'm sick of this mamsy-pamsy sort of give me grace when I slip up like it's a pill and I can remedy everything and blame it on the devil. That's just bunk. And Paul says there's coming a day when people would do that kind of stuff. They would just heap up teachers for themselves to justify their passions. Wow. What do we call that? We call that compromise doctrine. Compromise doctrine. Where kind of anything goes. I heard Jim Wallace this week say that he went to argue the case against federal government legislation seeking to give homosexual relationships the same privileges as married relationships. And he went to several ministers of the new government and he stated his case. And several ministers said to him, but Jim Wallace is the head of the Australian Christian Lobby, a good man. He said, but Jim, the Uniting Church don't agree with you. In fact, they ordain homosexuals into ministry. Thank you for your time, Jim, but you haven't got a case. Get out. And this happened over and over again, and so I call that a compromise of doctrine. And some people take the Jesus of the Bible and they compromise him and they make him into something he was never. And you've got people who are very subtle at it and very clever at it, and they can do it in such a way that you'd really have to have a lot of training to be able to hear that it's just off. Just off. There's a guy in America, his name's Joel Osteen. And you hear him and he's very nice and he smiles a lot and he looks nice and he wears nice suits and has a nice smile, and his wife is on television as an American Christian evangelist on television. Of course, she's got the buffy hair because that's apparently there must be some law that you have to. And so they look nice, and his teaching it sounds really kind of good, except when you go, well, I just have a look at, did he quote that right? And I've done this a few times. I go, it doesn't say that. It actually doesn't say that. And you can think, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't it? Doesn't doctrine matter? Here the Apostle Paul is saying, Timothy, I'm about to die. And he knew he was about to die. Agabus the prophet had told him that. They're going to take you, they're going to bind you, and you'll be dead, and you'll die. And Paul says to Agabus, I know, everywhere I go, the Spirit of God tells me this is what's going to happen. This is what awaits me. He knew he was in final hour type stuff for his life. And so he wrote to Timothy and said, Timothy, this matters. What you believe really matters. And so we're living in an age when people want to make Jesus into their Jesus. And this is where we've got to be really careful about this whole expression of have a personal relationship with Jesus. Yeah, I understand that. But you know what? He's not your personal Jesus. He's still the Jesus who is Lord. You don't make him your Lord. He is Lord. And so this is where it gets really, really silly for some people. Compromised doctrine, trying to make Jesus relevant. Let's bring that next one up, Tiger. Making Jesus relevant. Here's the homeless Jesus. Have a look at this. Here's the homeless Jesus. He's holding up a bit of cardboard. It says, we'll work for food. You know, and they present Jesus as the homeless Jesus. What about this one? This is the Jedi Jesus. There he is, Jedi using the cross as a ninja sort of lightsaber. The Jedi Jesus. What about this one? This is the hang 10 Jesus. There's Jesus sort of hanging 10. You know, we can make Jesus relate to your life circumstance. What about this one? This is the skating Jesus. There he is, Jesus doing a, whatever that's called. It's just, see, and here's the Rambo Jesus, a particular favourite of mine, the Rambo Jesus. Now, these are actually action dolls you can buy in America. Oh, you think I'm kidding? I wish.